final pro tip. I've seen it happen in the World Championships where the race starts and a paddle snaps or goggles break. Make sure to check your equipment before the race. And by before the race, I don't mean the night before when you're already stressed out of your mind. You want to check it before you fly out, before even when you start before you start packing your stuff. Check your goggles. Are they in good condition? Are there any mini tears in your swimmer paddle straps? Like, how does the zipper look on your wetsuit? Yeah. I mean, we've heard stories of at the World Championship, someone tries to zip up their suit and the zipper breaks and it's just like, oh my God, my race is over.
Welcome to the Low Tide Boys, a Swimrun podcast. I'm Chip.
And I'm Chris. This is episode 242 of the show. If you're racing the World Championship in a few weeks, you've likely reached the throw money at the problem stage for training. At this point, the hay's in the barn, but you want to make sure you've got your kit dialed in for the demands of what is, for anyone not doing the one water race, like probably the longest swim run that you'll face, right?
Yes.
So in this episode, we thought we would share our thoughts on the ideal swim run kit for ÖTILLÖ, the Swimrun World Championship, and also break down sort of each category of kit with our recommendations, or at least giving you a framework for how to think about what would make sense from a kit perspective.
Yes, and for those unfamiliar, we've done this race 2 times. So 2022, 2023. By no means does that make us experts, but we've also feel like we're swimrun sponges at this point. We've absorbed a lot of swimrun content into our brains.
This show has been very self-serving in that respect. While yes, we've only raced 2, I certainly feel very seasoned on that course from all our course preview guides, our countdown to ÖTILLÖ, everything we've done to try to help prepare ourselves, but also prepare you, the listener and viewers, to make sure that you just have like an amazing experience, because this is an amazing race. And Chipper,
yes,
again, for us, this was the longest swim run we've ever done. And when we're thinking about kit, one of the things that we were certainly being mindful of is like, okay, it's a long course, conditions can change. Swim run is cold business. The longer you're swim running, the more likely that you can get cold and then not recover from that. So for us, sort of generally thinking about the kit is always safe to say, like being conservative in terms of making sure you are indexing on not getting cold.
Yeah, that is sort of advice that we have taken and a sort of approach that we've had when we've did it. And I feel like it very much served us very well. So yeah, and we were sort of anchoring, or we're kicking off this list sort of at the wetsuit category, which is where you can introduce more sort of thermal properties here. And so we, starting at the wetsuit piece, certainly ARC, we love all their products and especially their wetsuits. They're the
Archipelago proven, man.
It's proven in the Archipelago. But both years we went with the Orno X, which is their warmest suit. Maybe you are sacrificing a little slightly bit of mobility because it does have a little bit of a thicker bottom, but I wouldn't say that impacted us at all. But yeah, the Orno X with wetsuits, I think our first year when we did it, we were like, we don't even want the cold water or cold air temp or combination and totality of those two things to even...
Almost like thinking about it, like minimizing the possibility, because we have raced in the Orno X before. Yeah, it's a warmer suit, but it's not like you're sweating buckets in it, right? So it's just giving you just that little bit of cushion, that little bit of barrier. So in case the day is longer than you thought it was going to be, even longer than you thought it might have been, at least you have like the right suit for when you get cold and conditions change and the water's cold. At the very least, you'll be able to kind of take care of yourself that way. And I think, with that, a framework to think about this is like, well, do you run hot? Do you run cold? If you know that you run super hot all the time, yeah, maybe you index to something more on the minimal range. I mean, we know people that do that race in the VIGs or do them in Ucho Airs or sleeveless suits or whatever. So it's really independent. Like you need to figure it out for yourself.
Yeah.
So I think for us, the framework is index on making sure you don't get hyperthermic. If you get too hot, there's always ways to deal with that. It's a little bit harder to come back from being too cold. And for us, I think I would echo your recommendation, Chipper. It's like Orno X is probably the safest bet you can be.
Sleeves.
With arm sleeves. It's the safest bet you can have. It's a great suit. Arc makes awesome products, but there's also other suits. Orca has some thicker suits. Zone 3 has some thicker suits. Head for sure has them. So thinking about the wetsuit, but I think our recommendation would be like Orno X to be on the safe side. And again, if you run hot, I would probably go Uta, and maybe not big unless you're just
still would recommend the arm sleeves. I think for that, just it's a long day. Unless you're Max and Hugo or Angel and Oscar or Desiree, you're going to be out there for 9+ hours, 8+ hours, probably closer to 10, 11, 12 hours if you're immortal like us. So yeah, like it's a long day. And like we said before, the weather in Sweden is, it can be overcast, can be a little bit more fickle compared to what we experience here in California.
You're on the water, you're on the coast, you're there all day. You start at dawn, really. So, weather can change in 12 hours.
Yeah, and there's not a tremendous amount of the course that's like exposed to, if it is a bluebird day, there is some exposed, but it's not like you're just running in the middle of nowhere. You're in the forest for a good chunk of it. So that will also kind of keep you a little bit cooler. But Orno X with arm sleeves there. Obviously, Orca, Head, Zone 3, they all make the wetsuits that we've reviewed and can recommend. I think even the Corp, the Arc Corp, their sort of entry level offering would work just fine.
For sure. Corp is a great suit. So that's our best thinking on wetsuits. Again, our the low tide boys pick would be Orno X, but really you have to be smart about it. Again, think about this in terms of, this is going to be the longest one we've done. What suit do you think you can wear for 8, 10, 12, 14 hours sometimes? So it's just, so thinking about it that way is super important. Now, the next piece, which I think after the wetsuit, is certainly one where most people have a lot of trepidation, a lot of going back and forth.
A lot of humming and hawing on this one.
A lot. And that's shoes. And I'm going to throw socks in there just to give a shout out to socks.
Yeah.
Knee highs, whatever sock you want to wear, something that is thin, high nylon content, or some of the smart wool stuff is what you want to do. Not cotton, not something that's just going to sponge up water. That's socks. Plenty of other content on socks. For a lot of this stuff, there's content everywhere.
I can't wait for our Swimrun socks episode, just dedicated to socks.
But shoes, for this course in particular, again, we want to frame it for you. Super long day. Your dogs are going to be barking 2/3 of the way through the race. You almost have like a half marathon run after you've been swim running for 5 to 9 hours already.
Yep.
And the terrain is really technical, super slippery at parts, runnable at parts. So you really get everything. So I think our advice, again, in terms of framing this, is you want to make sure that you have shoes that have really good grip.
Yep.
Second to that, like if that's 1, then 1A or 2 is a shoe that you can run 40-ish miles in, that you feel like, not so minimal that you're not prepared for it. I mean, people do the world champs in like Vivo Barefoots and stuff, but you're not just showing up to the world championship like doing that. Yeah. Same thing, people show up in Hoka's. We've raced in a variety of shoes.
Yep.
Solomon, Adidas, VJs, and Hoka's. So I think with that, Chipper, with that framing, what would be your recommendation, or how do you think about shoes for the world champs?
How I thought about it, I think one thing that I was really nervous about, and we've talked to Marcus Barton, very most expensive experienced swim runner in North America here, but he had a really good line that kind of always stuck with me is, you're jumping off of rocks, you're hopping around. He goes, you want to have the utmost confidence in your shoe. So with that, when you do take that leap of faith, if you will, I'm going to spring over to this rock, that you're confident that you're going to stick that landing and that you're not going to slip or do something like that, which could, turn your race not the right way.
I don't remember the episode number, but it was our Swimrun NC course preview episode from whenever that was, where he dropped that gem. Yeah,
that was good.
I think about that point as well. I mean,
it's a very good point.
You have to trust when you put your foot down, it's going to stick. If you don't have that level of trust in your shoe, I mean, it's just stressing yourself out.
Yeah, it's a lot of stress. So year 1 of doing ÖTILLÖ, I was indexing really high on, I was really concerned about the rocks being very slippery because that's the intel that we had gotten. So I opted for some VJ shoes, the Ultra 2s. I like them. I thought the grip was fantastic. I have not since had another shoe that I felt was grippier on that type of material. Now, I'm previously like a Hoka Speed Go kind of guy on the trails. I did feel that my dogs were barking a little bit too much for my liking. So the second year we did it, I opted for definitely throw money at the problem piece, but I got the Tecton Hoka Tecton 2s.
Yeah.
I will say the grip was not up to par of where we needed it to be for that race. There was some slipping and sliding around, which, you know, just kind of gets your heart jumping when you sort of skid out a few inches.
Especially when you don't expect it. Like there was this one on one, I think it was the second island, like you stood on a rock and both of your feet slipped out. And I remember being in the back being like, I don't like your grip, dude. Like I'm not liking your grip.
I can't change my shoes now. So we're going with it. But having said that, you know, I know Hugo and Max both wore those shoes the same year, I believe. So, you know, what works for some might not work for others, but I indexed more on the long run, like the 40 miles of running comfort. And I will say they did the job there. I felt like my feet weren't as, you know, sore on the long run. And they also had kind of a little bit of carbon fiber there, but you know, 2 weeks out, would you recommend? I might recommend going with what you know, and you know, not trying to like get a Hail Mary on the shoe piece. But Chris, what do you recommend for shoes?
Yeah, I mean, so the first year we did it, I wore the Salomon Amphib 2s, which are now long since, you know, out of production. Very minimal, very racy, really big lugs, worked great. I wore them because Pontus and George, G&P of, again, you got to go way back into our archive to hear those episodes, former world champions, like they wore them. And I was like, well, let me just do what they do. Certainly my dogs were barking as well, kind of a lot of mileage. You know, those shoes aren't really designed for sort of the ultra running aspect of it. The second year, which interestingly, the first year I did have the Adidas Terex
I remember
Speed Ultras that I was just kind of running around town with them, and everyone was wearing them. But I didn't want to, I was again trying to be conservative. I was like, well, I wasn't going to do something new on race day. Now I kind of regret it because I wore them this past year and they were great. And I totally recommend that shoe. Drains well, easy to run in, has a little bit more cushion. I think the newer generation has even more cushioning.
Yes.
So it might be even a better shoe for this course. But yeah, like Chipper said, for me, it was indexing on grip. You don't want to be sliding around more than you have to, but you really need to be able to, the shoe needs to be able to handle the demands of just the amount of running that you have to do.
A lot of running, and it's like you're on rock islands and then you're on the road, so it's not,
it's like concrete plush, which is the worst surface essentially.
So you know, again, if you're doing ÖTILLÖ, you've done at least a few swim runs, so you probably have a good sense of what shoes work for you and which ones don't. So this is an area that I would recommend just kind of going with what you know there, and going with that. But something, I think the points are trusting the grip that you have and confident that you know the shoe can get you through 40 something miles of running.
Yeah, for sure. So those are really the two big ones. Really quickly, we want to touch on pull buoys. You can listen to the show for any length of time. We love pull buoys. It's a very important topic for us. Use as big a pull buoys you can handle. And this is why, and I think this is a little bit different than other swimrun courses, because the Baltic Sea is so brackish and just not very salty. You actually don't float as much as you do in like sort of the ocean in North America or in like, I don't know, you know, Southern California or whatever, right? Salty Caribbean, for example. So a bigger pull buoy is actually good because it allows you to keep your sort of optimal swim position. So we usually recommend use as big a pull buoy as you can handle to maintain optimal positioning. That is doubly true. We'll double down on that recommendation for the World Championship. Again, it's a long day. You want to try to minimize as much drag as possible. You're already swimming essentially 10Ks or, you know, 10,000 yards in the water. So you don't want to make that any more arduous than it needs to be. The swim's already going to be challenging. So indexing for the right pull buoy, I think is helpful. Again, it's also personal. We still see, you know, the World Championship, when we were there last year, people still had the tiny pull buoys. So people are still keeping, you know, in that tiny pull buoy era, and it's working for them. So that's the thing. The other one is paddles. So, you know, again,
what are we recommending for the pull buoy though?
Well, again, as big a one as you can handle.
We did the Keel Plus.
Keel Plus, yeah.
Years.
So for us, it's Keel Pluses. And we've tried the Keel Mega. I don't know, just thinking, kind of projecting. Would you use the Keel Mega in a race, or do you think it's too big for you?
I did try it out again. It's very large, and it's a little bit more cumbersome on the transition piece just because it is so big. I'm a bigger guy, but I think the Keel Mega has its place for the type of person. If you're like, the Keel Plus is just a little bit too small, I wish there was a little bit more. Well, now there is, so
there you
go with it.
Yeah,
but, I'm sure ARC will be there as they usually are. You can take a look and see for yourself how
it's huge.
Is.
It's huge. It goes up to all the way to the limit of what's
the limit, dude. Like
of the legal size, which is almost like maybe the legal size too big if it ends up being that big. So moving on to swim paddles. Again, we've talked ad nauseum about this stuff. You want to use this, the swim paddle that's appropriate for your level of fitness and your strength level. So world champs, again, you're swimming 10,000 yards, not the time to introduce some new giant paddle into the equation because you're going to get blasted.
Yeah.
It's better to just be super conservative. Whatever you've been using for your other swim runs, I think that's kind of where you want to keep it. And again, you want to learn more about paddles. We've got a carbon fiber paddle back. We have, swim paddles for swim running. We have tons of content on that. So you can find that on our website, but it's really just like, hey, paddles are an important piece of this, and you don't want to, I guess, like our takeaway is like, just don't do anything crazy paddles.
Yeah, like if you've been using mediums, now's not the time to like, think that you're flexing and get some extra larges or whatever. Now, we use the Frank Paddle Blue Steels. We've used the Blue Steel Pro, or we use the Pro with the fins both years.
Yeah, I used the Pros both years. You used Blue Steels the first year, and then the Pros the second year.
Really?
Yeah, because
that's anyway, right. Yeah, I was not
because he was not having. I was like, oh, these make me faster. I'm good. I'll just rock with these.
But I would imagine there's going to be a lot of carbon fiber hotness at ÖTILLÖ in the gear area.
Classic. Throw your money at the problem.
People are going to be tempted. Now, Chris, what would you say if I'm tempted by capitalism and I feel like, oh man, the carbon fiber paddles are the new hotness? If you were using the arc blade mediums regular, do you think you can spring for the carbon fibers for race day? Would you roll the dice on that?
So yes, I would roll the dice, but I would say you get the same size paddle. Yeah. So yeah, like if you see the new arc blades, if they have them there, the float and stuff like that, and you're inspired because you're already buying, like the drip, the sweat shorts, the sweatshirt, the beanie,
cozy,
the dad hat.
I got a problem
the socks,
with merch, with
the other
merch.
Beanie, the other hat, the other shirt. If you're going down that way and you see the paddles, you want to go for it. I would say go for it because carbon fiber, in our experience, does make you faster because they don't flex, so you can just pull the water more. I don't think going from like a medium plastic paddle, a medium carbon fiber paddle, as long as they're like similar size, probably handle that. I definitely wouldn't go larger. And if anything, if you're super worried about it, go smaller. But yeah, I think if carbon fiber, classic, throw your money at the problem type of purchase, and it's something that can actually make your day easier. I remember, so last year, our friends, the Concho Boys, I basically just gave a set of Frank paddles, Blue Steels to Addison, who was going to be leading most of the swims. And it was just like, here you go. Here's 5 seconds per 100 just as a gift. I just saved you like 30 minutes of racing over the course of the thing.
You're welcome.
So yeah, there is an advantage there, and you should take, if you feel so compelled, we would recommend it. Now from there, goggles, that's another one. Personal preference, whatever you've been using, there isn't any special World Championship goggle advice that we have, other than a lot of people race the World Championships without goggles because, again, the water's so brackish. It's kind of this weird water. We've mentioned it on the show before. It feels like slightly salty lake water.
Yeah.
So you can totally do it without goggles. Yeah, with some jellyfish hanging around. But yeah, just do whatever you do with goggles. Do not overthink that. If you're throwing money at the problem, just get a new set of the goggles you're using now. So you have like a fresh
anti-fog juice on them and stuff. I bring my own shark spit to get it fresh.
Exactly.
A fresh application the night before.
Exactly. So from there, Chipper, there's a couple sort of like miscellaneous categories that I think it's worth mentioning because it is part of the Swimrun kit gear-wise. So one of them is nutrition storage. We recommend a kangaroo top of some kind. Again, if you're worried about being cold,
recommended.
They make a thermal top. So, there shouldn't be any there shouldn't be any impediment in terms of like whether you should have one or not. You should have one. You need to have one. It's a good place for you to store. You got to bring a lot of stuff with you if you're going to fuel accordingly. So you need to have a space to put all that shit, basically.
That would be something you absolutely, if you don't have, purchase it there the day before. You're gonna thank us
Seriously.
later. But certainly a great piece to add to your kit. There's, like Chris said, there's so much to store for so long. It just makes it really easy. I know Arc has like new white ones now that look pretty cool as well. So hopefully they have some of that there and plenty of pockets. There's 3 pockets on the front.
Yep, 3 pockets in the front, 1 in the back. And and also a great thing to help organize your stuff. There's a lot of moving pieces on such a long race. So, having a system for that as well. Miscellaneous lube. Definitely want to lube up. Maybe even bring something with you so that you can lube up, along the way. A good friend of ours, Phil, he brings like these disposable biofreeze packets in case he gets some sort of niggle. He can just rub it on a muscle. The other thing there is soft flasks. So we've certainly evolved. I think this year we've carried a soft flask for any race that's been over a couple of hours, and even for some that were shorter. And we've talked about this before. The advice on the soft flask is you want to have as small a nozzle as possible because the bigger the nozzle, it just can kind of bug you in different places and might be a little bit unwieldy. But yeah, I think like any other thing there were earplugs, if that's your thing.
Yeah, I guess talk about if we feel like, hey, the water's really cold or I'm very adverse to cold water. There's certainly some, thermal type things that you can do. Arc has like a Halo neoprene headband, which we've like used around in practice. That is, I think actually the first year I brought it just because it literally folds up like a Kleenex, and it was like
it's like a spring roll.
Just in case it starts snowing, I can like put this on or something kind of thing. And then they do have the kangaroo thermal top. So if you are a type of person who is more worried about getting cold, go with your arm sleeves. And if you really are very concerned, you can get like obviously like a neoprene swim cap or double up on your swim caps. Probably would suffice there.
Yeah, and it's legal to wear neoprene gloves if you want. So if you have like some sort of arthritis thing or something going on with your hands, and that's, I forget what it's called. It's like rheumatoids. I don't know. I can't remember what it is, but yeah, where like it's hard for you to feel your fingers and stuff like that when it gets cold. So all that stuff is legal. Now, a final pro tip that
I think we're probably going to add.
We're probably going to add.
Yeah.
But the first of final pro tips, which, I think about this all the time. I've seen it happen in the World Championships where the race starts and a paddle snaps or goggles break. Yes. Make sure to check your equipment before the race. And by before the race, I don't mean the night before when you're already stressed out of your mind, in Enduro handset waiting for the early morning call, right? You want to check it before you fly out, before when you start before you start packing your stuff. Check your goggles. Are they in good condition? Are there any mini tears in your swimmer paddle straps? Like, how does the zipper look on your wetsuit? Yeah. I mean, we've heard stories of at the World Championship, someone tries to zip up their suit and the zipper breaks and it's just like, oh my God, my race is over. And then because swim runners are so awesome, someone shows up, it's like, I actually have an extra suit in my bag. Do you want it? And, save the day there, right? So just make sure you're checking your stuff. I mean, the last thing you want is to kind of fail on a mechanical type of thing here, because it just takes away from the whole experience. So just making sure, I mean, I know when we did ÖTILLÖ last year, our Orno X's were kind of on their last leg.
Mine was a little worse for wear.
Yeah, it is just like, okay, we know where the soft spots are. We'll be more gentle with cabbing up and cabbing down and things like that. So we're not like just punching a hole through it. But yeah, for all those reasons, just check your shit, making sure it's in good condition. Like, how do the laces look on your shoes? You need to replace those. I mean, that's the level of minutia we're talking about. Just, anything that you can do to sort of ensure that the race unfolds in the way that you want. Can't control all the variables, but for the ones you can control, like checking your gear, please do it.
Yeah, I think, that's like the headline for this episode, I think, is like, how can you make your gear not be an issue on race day for this really amazing race experience you're going to have there. And then how do we kind of think about extras? Oh man, I hear goggles breaking. Should I bring an extra set of goggles? Should I bring more gel? Like, how do you kind of think about that? one year I think I brought an extra pair of goggles because they just kind of were so small, sort of thing. But I think it's like gauge your own, your own anxieties. Like, hey, well, it helped you feel better to have an extra set of goggles on you. Go for it.
Like I bring a ginger chew just in case I ever get like pukey or something.
Comforty kind of little things. If that's a packet of mustard or BioFreeze or ginger chews or whatever you do. Candy, I know can definitely be helpful in there. But
yeah, I think we've covered all the different categories. I think really like the take home for this is like, hey, the ultimate guide to what to wear for the World Championship really starts with looking internally to see like, well, what's going to be ultimate for you? Because, one of the cool things about Swimrun, and there's a whole long list of why it's cool, it's like, hey, there is a lot of room for individuality and self-expression and, modulating your kit for it to work for you. So take advantage of that. We always say when people ask us, oh, should I wear shoes during the swim? Should I use a pool buoy? We're always like, hey, well, what are 99% of swimrunners doing? And kind of start there. So big pool buoy, good suit with sort of bottoms that are engineered to be able to run in, appropriately sized paddles, shoes that drain well. From there, do whatever you want. But thinking about this race, it's a beast. It's the longest race that you will probably have done. Again, unless you've done the one water race. And even if you're doing ÖTILLÖ for the first time or doing it for the third time, I'm sure the people that are doing it for the third time will be like, I wish I would have told the person myself when I did it the first time to do X, Y, and Z. So we're trying to save you from that a little bit with this. And and let us know if you have some other ideas in terms of kit that we haven't thought about. But yeah, I think with that, for everyone that's racing in a few weeks or whenever you're listening to this, it's an awesome race.
Yeah.
Have a blast. Enjoy every minute. Enjoy the journey and make sure you hit the chocolate balls and all the bonus aid stations.
Yeah. And the Twix bar after the pig swim.
Which we've heard Twix is back.
Coming back?
It's back.
Okay. We put the good word in with Stefan. And it's happening.
It's back.
It's happening. Have a great race.
That's it for this week's episode. Thanks so much for listening to the show. Make sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and leave a rating or review, since that's the best way to help other people discover the show and the sport of swimrun.
Check out our website, lowtideboys.com. That's boys with a Z, for swimrun resources, including gear guides, tips, how-to videos, and so much more. Make sure to check out our meme page at The Low Tide Boys on Instagram. If you have any questions or suggestions for the show, send us a DM or email us at lowtideboys@gmail.com.
We'd like to thank Riding Easy Records for our show music, and of course our wives for their support and tolerance of our swimrun and other activities.
Lots of activities.
Lots of activities.
Finally, you can support our efforts on Patreon. Until next time, get out there and go for a swim.
Then a run.
And then a swim.
Then another run.
Then another swim.
Then run some more.
Just keep going.
Let's go.
And then stop at some point because,
And fuel. Don't forget to fuel.
Gotta fuel
too. Of course, yes.